Welcome to French Property Renovations, and I'm preparing myself to point the front of my house with my lime, and my cement mix has been stuck for a long time, so it needs a good clean out, and I'm getting into position. Alright, Trev. So I've got a stand. I'm going to put it onto the stand so it's a bit higher up for loading, so there's less bending of the back, so maybe a bit more health and safety conscious. So basically we've got two legs and they slot together. Quite simple, nice little bit of engineering. And it stands up, self-supporting, quite safe, 4 legs. That's the central bar. The longer piece goes through the leg, give it a little wiggle around, and there you go, voila. I've now got to get that cement mixer on there, and I'm on my own. So I have to lift that mixer up and just literally drop it on the top. I don't know what my dog's doing, but he's having fun. So how am I going to do that? So this is what I'm going to show you now. When you're working on your own, just try and be safe. So what I'm going to do to get that on top of there, I'm not going to lift it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to tip the cement mixer, or the lime mixer in our case. Move the electrical cable out of the way, and this is the bit that sits on top of our stand. So what I'm going to do, I don't know where it's going to land, hopefully it'll land somewhere reasonable. So put 2 legs on the floor and insert the leg. Make sure these are fine. Now I think that is going to end up in about this area, but I want it a little bit further back. So what I'm going to do, let's take that off again. So we want it somewhere there, I reckon. So I think I need to come back a couple of foot. So let's spin it backwards. Let's bring it back 2 feet. Keep an eye on the cable. Let's tip it now. So there, it's on top of the drum. We'll start again, lift the legs up, insert. Now I've picked this spot because I've still got a bit of roof here above me, so it'll keep it out of the rain if it does start raining, and it's also in the shade as well. Here's the tricky part. So you don't need to be super heavy, strong, so we'll use the fulcrum, and basically I'm just going to tip it over. So no major lifting, safe on the back, and I now have a mixer up in the air and ready to go. So I've already got my power, so I'm going to connect it all up. I've got lots of stone and terracotta tiles. I'm probably going to break a few up. There you see. Bit of stone, bit of terracotta. I'm going to put a bit of water in, throw all these in, let it churn round for a little bit, and that hopefully that'll clean my cement mixer, ready for tomorrow. Hello and welcome to French Property Renovations, and today we're going to do our first mix with the 3.5 NHL lime mortar. Just for clarity now, there are different types of lime. You can get 2, 3.5, you can get 5. 2 and 3.5 are good for indoors and outdoors, but 2 is obviously softer than 3.5. If you wanted to point, say, an exposed chimney, which got a lot of rain, a lot of weather in the winter, it might be advantageous to use an HL5, because that's sets a little bit harder, but it's not as breathable as your 3.5 and your 2. So you can use that in different circumstances. If you have a wall, for example, that gets a lot of rain, a lot of weather on it, you might decide to go for the 5 on that particular wall, depending on the direction it's facing, and then on the other walls you might use 3.5, so they are a bit more breathable. But the idea of lime is for it to be breathable. So mixer was cleaned out because it's not been used for a long time yesterday. Put a load of stones and bricks in it, whizzed it round for half an hour, tipped it out. So it's a lot cleaner than it was yesterday. My mix is going to be 3-to-1. So I found these. Trev, come here. Got the dog helping me today, Trevor. And the mix is going to be 3-to-1. So I found these buckets in one of the outbuildings, big stack of them. Some of them are split, some of them are okay for water, but they're good for our ratio. So our ratio is going to be 3-to-1. So I've prepared 3 buckets and 1 bucket of lime, 3.5 NHL. So that's going to be the mix. So first day on the mixer, I'm going to give you some insight into using it and how we're going to go about doing it. Yesterday it rained here, so my aggregate's probably going to be more damp than it would have been if we'd have had a whole dry week. So because we don't need lots and lots of water for a lime mortar mix, I'm going to put 2 buckets in to start with and probably 2/3 of my bucket of lime into the mixer and let it dry mix. That's important. Now it's going to dry mix for now, and then when we can see the consistency and how that's developing moisture wise, I can then add the last bits to the whole mix and we can go from there. Once we've got that consistency that we're happy with, we're looking for a mix wherein you can make it into like snowballs and it'll stick together. We don't want it too wet, because when we put it on the brickwork or the stonework and it's too wet, it can result in too much shrinkage during the curing, drying out process, and that is one of the main reasons for failing lime mortar in the first, say, 1 to 5 years. So we don't want to have too much shrinkage, and we also need to control that drying out period. So we're looking for this snowball effect in our mix. So we're going to put it all in, mix it dry, and it's going to have to mix for at least 20 minutes. So I'll probably pause the video and come back to it and show you where we're up to on that. But first let's get going. Lime burns, so we need a dust mask because we don't want it in the lungs, and as I've said before, it does react with water. Your lungs are full of moisture, because we're full of moisture, blood and moisture. So I'm going to put my dust mask on. I've got my gloves, and it might be advantageous to put some goggles on as well. So here goes. So I'm just going to push some of this to the back, and what we've got to do while we're mixing it, we want to make sure it doesn't clog on the 2 paddles, because that's not going to help us in our mix. And now 2/3 of the lime. And if you get any on you, try and brush it off. So here it goes. And I always find it safer to stand to the side, because you do get splashes and even powder in your face. See, can you see all the powder coming out? Oh wait, Trev. So try not to breathe any in, and if we leave that now for 20 minutes, we can come back to it and see if it's mixing nicely, and you can see the lime in the air, and then we'll see how it's doing moisture wise, and then I can add this in, because if it's been really wet, you might find you don't actually need any water, but we'll let that mix for this so it's got a really good mix, and then we'll add this, because if you add all that all in one go, you might find that all the aggregate is at the back of the mixer and the front bit's mixed, which is not what you're trying to achieve. I've used it on the stand today, but I like it on the floor. But you get used to different things. Also, a point to consider when you're doing this, where you're going to set up. I've got my lime here, so it's a short walk away, and I've got sand aggregate outside. So I'm not doing as much walking whilst I'm mixing. Once it's mixed, I'm going to leave the mix in the mixer and probably use one of the buckets that doesn't have a crap in it to put the mortar in and then take that to where I'm working, because you can do that small quantities. So depending how big, strong you are, you can put enough in that you're comfortable with and take it to your place of work. And you can do that. Whilst this is mixing, it's a good idea sometimes to go and spray the stonework that you're going to do, so as it's giving it time for it to moisten in. Because this is my first mix, I have some rather large holes, so I'm going to spray the holes individually with my little sprayer and point them all up first. So when I'm doing those, I'm not actually going to finish on the surface. I'm going to leave them about 25mm shy of the finished part, because I want the carbonation process to start on that. So it might be tomorrow or even a week later when I go over the top of them, because the length of my wall is probably getting on to 15 metres, so I have a 15-metre run to completely point during the next few days. So the bit I'm going to do now is going to be random here, there and everywhere, and just sort out some of the loose stonework. It gives you a feel for it then, so I think that's a good way to go forward before you're actually into pointing it. You can also see as it's drying how it's curing and the colour that's coming out. Obviously my sand here is a yellowy colour and my lime is a white, so I'm expecting it to be a kind of a light finish, maybe similar to this. You can add colours and all sorts to your mixes to variation, like for example charcoal dust they used to use, things like that, just to give it a nice fleckle. But if you don't need to, why bother? It's all more expense, more cost, and labour wise it's expensive anyway, and materials these days are expensive. So I'm not going to use any, I'm just going to use it as is. So while that's mixing now, I'm going to go and do a bit of spraying, see how we get on. And the sun's coming out now. Started off misty this morning, but it's good weather because we don't want it too hot for our curing process. We need to keep it controlled and moist. So, cool. So we're back to our mix now. I've just took some of the stuff off the sides, and as you can see, there's still a bit on the other side. If you're going to do this, you have to be very careful. You need to get a bit of practice maybe, but really be careful with this. You can go in like this, just give it a little mix while it's going. But if these paddles catch your trowel or your shovel, because of the circular motion, it will take the shovel and start spinning, and that's when your wrists go. So that's using the trowel. You can, sometimes you'll see it stuck in the back and you can dive in with your shovel like that and back out. But you've really got to be careful, because this is what happens. And it's going round and it'll pull your wrists off. So like now, just go with the flow of the mixer and pull it out. But you will get used to it. But again, it's easy to stop it. Have a look. Now on there, I've got some on the panel, so I'll give it a little tap and I'll use my builder's trowel and just pull it all off. And then crack it back on. But that's coming along nicely now, it's not a bad little mix. These buckets are very big buckets comparative to say an old paint bucket or a house bucket. So I'm getting a lot more aggregate and a lot more lime into this one mix. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put the whole lot in for a dry mix, and then it's all mixed. But for the first time, when you're getting used to doing a particular job, I would err on the side of caution. So when it's fully mixed, free aggregate in the whole line, I'm going to probably get the shovel and take one whole bucket out and then start adding the water to what I have. And if I over add the water, I can throw in my dry mix just to lose that additional moisture. So here it goes with the last one. Let's get some PPE on. So gloves, right hand, gloves, dust mask and goggles. The dust mask's right over there, so I'm not going to run over there. So I'm going to throw it in from the side. So what happens sometimes when you're throwing wet sand, wet aggregate into your mixer, because it is wet, it sticks on the back, and that's what doesn't allow for it to fully mix. Get yourself out of the way. So now, some 20-25 minutes, what I'm going to do, it's all dry at the moment, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some out, and as you can see, that's the consistency that I've got now, all mixed, aggregate and 3.5 hydraulic lime. So this is my safeguard. First time you've mixed it, you're not sure of your quantities, waters, everything. We can do a mix first and have a little bit of spare capacity already mixed in the background. So if we do put some water in that's too much and the mix is a bit wet, we can fix it with what we've got here. So I'm taking out roughly a bucket, and now it's ready for the water. So I'm going to do this bucket out of the way, just so as it keeps the splashes out of it. Go on, Trev. So I'm going to start the mixer off. Now the bucket that had the lime in, I put my water into that, swilled it, so it's kind of a limey water. And what I like to do is just to pour it in from the edge, and then any lime that's on the edges and hasn't really mixed will go into the mix. So just gently pour it in like that. And then again, we'll just leave that to plod on. So we're looking, I get my gloves on, and then we can test it by just putting our hands in and seeing what the consistency is like. And we're looking for to go into like these little globules. I don't know if you can see them, see how it's going into like little round pieces. So, see how it's a bit crumbly that. We want it to have some kind of, see there, I'm looking for like that, but it's still a bit wet, so when I put it into compression it's cracking, so it needs a little bit more water. But let me explain, you can't take too much time doing this, because this is the fundamentals of it all really now. So take your time, get the moisture right, and I'll leave that mixing, and I'll come back to us and show you when it's mixed. So I've stopped the mixer, and this is my first mix minus the bucket that we prepared. And if we look at it now, that's a nice kind of snowball consistency. You can push it, it feels nice to work with, it's not too wet because we don't want to have too much shrinkage, and the shrinkage is because the water evaporates in the drying process, so hence we don't want it too wet. But that to me is what you're looking for. I could throw that at an apprentice right now. Splatter. Anyway, so now what I'm going to do, that's used roughly half of one of these buckets. So in the future I can mix my whole aggregate and probably put just under half a bucket in, and I'll be there or thereabouts then to get my right consistency. But make sure, I don't know if you can see from where you are there, but all the mortar now is sinking to the bottom with the weight. There's nothing stuck at the top of the mixer, so it's all mixed, and there's no white around the edges to show that I've got any lime left over. There you go, snowball. So I'm going to put this last bucket in now, and then mix it up. So, dust mask for use. And this is why it sticks, because big buckets you tend to throw them at the back, because otherwise they end up on the floor. Anyway, not as much dust there because the aggregate is beginning of the process of mixing it, so the lime has become wet and heavy. And when I went through my tools for doing this job the other day, I omitted two. So let me just find them quickly. One is this one, it's a nice little pointing trowel. I'm probably going to use that today and go back in the bucket. And the most important tool, a cup. I don't love pies, but it says that I love pies. But anyway, I'll let that mix while I have a brew.